Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you wouldn't mind just putting into chat for me where you're from and what the weather's like out there. So I'm based in Brisbane and it's raining up here. So let us know where you're from and make sure you can hear us all right and everything's going well from a tech point of view. Shortly, I'm going to introduce you to today's panellists. But first, a little bit of an overview of what today's discussion is going to be about. So accounts payable is often an overlooked service from bookkeepers and is typically bundled into that everyday bookkeeping process. But today, we're going to consider how to unlock accounts payable as a service and take a look at how you can make accounts payable a discrete revenue centre in your business. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, here's a couple of reasons. Firstly, a bit of increased revenue. That always comes in handy. So by leveraging the software knowledge and skills that we all have as bookkeepers, we can earn a really good revenue stream from accounts payable services. And importantly, this is a regular revenue stream. So you can plan around that, and given it is a regular revenue stream, it's more highly valued when one day you might decide to sell your business. So it actually becomes part of that sales process. It also satisfies a client's need. Now, clients are obviously time poor, they need up-to-date financial information, and you are the most skilled person in that bookkeeping space, can do the work faster, more accurately than your client. So by outsourcing this accounts payable function, the client buys themselves back some time, valuable time to invest in their business or their personal life, however they choose. So that's another great reason to look at this particular issue. The other thing is it builds a more loyal client as well. So when you take an integral business function like accounts payable, and from a client that becomes a stickier client to you, simply because you're looking after them, you're looking after that accounts payable process, and as a result, your retention or client retention goes up. So some great things there to consider when looking at accounts payable as a service. So how are we going to look at today? Well, we're going to speak to some bookkeepers who have walked the walk. So a couple of introductions. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Nikki Douglas. Now, Nikki's a director of First Class Accounts Canberra Central. And as the owner of First Class Accounts, Nikki's been working with clients for many years, helping them to implement paperless systems to help save time and money. And accounts payable is a core service offered by Nikki and a team. We've also joined by James Lin. James is a sales lead of the Australian Pacific region at ApprovalMax. He's been working with the bookkeeping and accounting firms for over 6 years, helping them to streamline their service offerings, and of course using technology is a key part of that. James previously worked at Fathom, which is a reporting and cash flow forecasting tool, but now heads up the sales team at ApprovalMax. And of course, the other good-looking fellow on the screen there is Peter Thorpe. Unfortunately, Pete couldn't join us today. So I'm Kelvin Deer, a director of Australian Bookkeepers Network. Had a medium-sized accounting practice for over a couple of decades and was a co-founder of ABN about 20 or so years ago. So can also speak fluent bookkeeper as well. So let's get things underway. Nikki, if a business is going to outsource their accounts payable function, there are a number of elements to the decision. Let's call them the moving parts. So those sub-functions we need to tame in order to effectively outsource that total accounts payable service. So Nikki, you've been down this road. What questions did you have when you first thought about delivering an outsourced accounts payable service?
Firstly, I just want to apologise to everyone. I am suffering from a little bit of the flu at the moment, so I just wanted to apologise for my voice. But as a bookkeeper, it's all about resilience. Those ATO compliances don't care that we're ill, so we're still here doing what we do. So firstly, I just wanted to apologise about my crackly voice this morning. But Kelvin, when we first looked at offering accounts payable, it was a little bit off-centre at the time, and it wasn't a core service. People were always talking about the ATO compliance and payroll, and AP just kind of sat on the side. So when we first looked at bringing it into the service offerings that we do, we sort of had to look at, firstly, how could we do that? How are we going to capture all of that information? How can we make sure that it's approved to minimize our risk? Because obviously as an outsourced service, we want to minimize our risk as well. Then how would we manage the payments for the clients and the physical payment of those bills. So there was quite a bit that we had to consider and learn how best to do that and offer it through to our clients.
Yeah. And why did you decide to offer accounts payable as a service? What was it that sort of you looked at and thought this is something that can be separated from the rest of those sort of data processing type tasks?
It really started from clients complaining about their current process and how most clients had a very manual process. So for us, it turned out to be something that was really very tangible for a client. It was a very real need in their business. So clients had a problem and we wanted to try and fix it for them. Excuse me. Sorry. So by focusing on accounts payable as a service, it really did free up very tangible time for the clients. For many people, they had a very manual process. So by automating that, putting some software into the process, there was a very tangible effect on their time, their outputs, their reporting, so many different things. It was, for us, it was a pretty easy service to implement. Many clients consider it quite low level. It's often done by admin people, or there might be a variety of stuff and they're printing off their papers and giving it to someone to get a little signature on it. So once we found out that so many people were doing it manually and investing a lot of time, a lot of labor resources into it, that was why we really saw it as an opportunity to generate some revenue. Obviously for us, we're a business, we're all about generating revenue, but it really did make a very tangible impact on the client. And we found that by starting with something like accounts payable, it really ratified our position as experts, which then helped to expand the other services that we could then do. Suddenly, when accounts payable is working smoothly, then they're more confident in outsourcing their payroll or their ATO compliance or whatever else that might be. So it was a really, really good choice that we made at the time.
Yeah, just putting a foot in the door often helps a client sort of understand some of those other offerings as well, doesn't it? So as you say, an accounts payable is quite an easy one for them to grasp, that it's as you say, it's low level, and it's something that if they actually do, free up some of that valuable time, then they can do some other things.
And you also get a really good understanding of a business when you're spending so much time in their accounts payable. It really does give you a lot of transparency on that client when you're in the details so much, which then opened up opportunities for, other services and some advisory, because you really did get a lot more transparency than if you're just doing the bank reconciliation. So it was a very wise decision that we made at the time.
Yeah. Did you find, Nikki, that as you say, you know, clients focusing on that business, but also helping that relationship in terms of becoming a bit more sticky to you as their bookkeeper? I will.
Oh,
Nikki does all my accounts payable, so it's hard for me to move somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It really did foster that trust relationship. And accounts payable is, it's a high touch service. So whilst it's super easy to implement and automate for them, they're doing it every day. So we really did become a part of their team, not just, oh yeah, the bookkeeper that does the BAS once a quarter. It really does help you to position yourself as a part of their operations team, which is just fabulous, and it just opens up so many other opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, and presumably it's a fairly easy conversation starter as well, isn't it? Because accounts payables, as you say, it's such a big area, but if you don't get it right, then it can cause all sorts of problems, cash flow,
Oh,
etc. So it should be an easy conversation starter with a client.
oh, absolutely. So many people, they didn't trust their accounts because they didn't know where accounts payable was, and I took that for granted at the time. I sort of assumed that everyone would be all over their accounts payable, but they're not. Even just putting in that process to capture everything and make sure the right people were approving the bills, just had such a profound effect from their relationship with their suppliers, because suddenly all the bills get paid on time. You know, it's not a situation where one or two get missed. To the transparency for their cash flow forecasting, just so many different things that I will admit at the time I did take it for granted. I thought everyone knew to pay their bills on time, but yet they don't. They're so focused on customer service and so many other things that often AP is almost a neglected facet within their business. So
It is certainly
taking
that.
that burden off of them, huge impact, really, really
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
impact.
It's interesting, that one, because we had a session recently about the payment of bills on time, and the flow on impact to that, with a client's credit rating, and particularly if one of the bills that isn't being paid on time is the tax department, then that also can cause all sorts of grief with the tax department in terms of chasing that debt and getting a bit of a black mark against your client's name on that front as well. So some really good stuff there. Thanks for that, Nikki. That leads us to a first poll that we're just going to run now, because we want to get a bit of an idea of where accounts payable fits into your business as a service. So just up on your screen there, if you wouldn't mind. So based on what you have heard so far, do you feel confident in offering accounts payable services to your client? So if you could just mark the box yes, no, or need more time to understand it, greatly appreciate that. Give that a moment or two just to get going. And just while people are responding to that, Nikki, the other thing that you sort of mentioned there on your slide was just it's a fairly straightforward process to implement as well. So it doesn't seem to be a difficult thing.
Not if you've got the right tools. It's a really easy process to implement.
Yeah, yep. All right, we've got the results being shared there with us now. So it looks like there's a really good confidence there about being able to offer that as a service. So Nikki, do you want to comment on any of those results there?
I think it's a really good service for people to offer, and I think it deserves quite a lot of weight put onto it, because it is a profitable service. So if people aren't offering it or don't have it fully streamlined, I definitely suggest that people, do a little bit more research and find out how to implement it efficiently so it can be quite profitable.
Yeah, yep, yep. And look, if you've got any thoughts or questions or comments, feel free to put them into chat or into the questions, and the team will give us a hand in responding to some of those either throughout this session or a little bit later as well. So feel free to sort of put some comments or questions into chat about accounts payable and whether you feel confident, not confident, if you do need more time, what is it you need more time about. So just good to have some understanding and a conversation going in chat. If you feel like doing that, that'd be great. So Nikki, let's say we identify those clients in need. So you spoke earlier about having that conversation. Indicators might be that the owner's time in the business is stretched a little bit too thin, and you can probably see that quite readily if you're at the client's premises and you can see they're running around like a blue-ass fly and not spending time in their own business, but too worried about some other things like accounts payable. So there's that opportunity cost of their time in the business. So that's high. They're bogged down in admin. Or maybe they're paying too high a price in their personal life. So maybe sort of spending too much time in this administration role and therefore sacrificing some of that life balance that we also desperately need these days. Do you think that AP services may be advantageous to your client? So can you share with listeners how specifically you promote accounts payable to your clients and potentially prospects as well?
So when we meet with either an existing client, because sometimes, this is a service that we add into clients that we already have, but quite often it is a new client that we approach in relation to their accounts payable. And the big one is finding out what their current process is. And the second someone says to me, oh, we have a spreadsheet, then you know that there's an opportunity
Cringe.
there to make it probably more efficient, because unless they're actually a bookkeeper, they're probably not efficient in spreadsheets either. So it starts at the I guess you can say it sort of almost starts at the bottom, when you're having that introduction conversation with them. Tell us about your business, tell us about your processes, and asking about that accounts payable process and being very specific in some of the questions. Do you think there's a way to make it better? Do you think, how much time does it take you? Now, time is a big one. I had a client once say to me that he can now go to his son's football on Saturdays because we've saved him a day a week. And it just blew my mind that by outsourcing accounts payable, it saved him a day a week. And that's a really big one for us. It's saving them their time, but then asking them about what controls they have in place. How do they know the right people are approving the right invoices, or did that stock actually arrive? What are their internal processes in relation to, yes, a bill came in, but, how is that? What's that document journey for it to come in, the stocks arrived or whatever that might be, to then be approved, be coded correctly, so it's being coded in the right spot, and therefore getting paid in a timely manner. And you'll find that a lot of people don't have that down pat. So if you can become an expert within that space, it's a very easy thing to promote. And we do find for a lot of people that it is kind of almost a one size fits all. Like our methodology that we use pretty much fits most businesses with only very little tweaking. So again, that makes it very easy for us to put our hands on our heart and say, hey guys, we can make a really real difference in your day-to-day operations of your business if you outsource it to an expert. And it's not that we're an expert in AP, we're an expert, sorry, voice is cracking, an expert in the tools. And it's the tools that make this so efficient. If they were just sending us the bills and we had to manually put them in, that's not saving us any time or, making us any money. It's about making sure we have that tool set behind us to make the process really efficient. And again, it's that conversation starter into all of the other services. You touch on cash flow, anything that's got to do with their cash flow, they're gonna, that they will lap it up. I haven't met a client that, doesn't consider cash flow one of their high priorities. So if you get AP down pat, they get that transparency in their finance system, so they know what bills are going to be paid when, then it's a winner. To be honest, it's.
I might get your comment, Susie, Nikki, rather, on Susie's just put something into chat there where she says big issue for her when she's doing a cleanup job. So obviously we hear this a lot from members where they come in, they do the cleanup, and she's actually saying that she normally finds that the accounts payables is in a real mess. The system is used spend money rather than paying off the actual creditor itself. And therefore it's created a big problem, no double entry bookkeeping, and I just wouldn't mind getting your thoughts on that comment.
I agree wholeheartedly. We quite often see it when we start a new client that their accounts payable isn't up to date. When they outsource their AP to us, there is so much more activity around the accounts payable report. So there's a lot more ownership put back on the client about, oh no, that bill's been paid. Oh, hang on, I paid it on my personal credit card by accident. Instead of it just being a report that sits in the background, they actually take ownership of their accounts payable report. And, I can put my hand on my heart and say our accounts payable reports for the clients that we do AP, it's accurate, because they're taking more notice of it. Suddenly they have the time to take more notice instead of it just being, oh, well, the bills get paid. Oh, I don't know, that supply didn't get fully paid. Or worse, they pay off statement. That's always a bit of an eye opener when they just pay off statement. But we do find that clients get a lot more buy-in, and a lot more understanding. We're primarily zero based. Most of our clients are on zero. So we show them, here's your accounts payable, here's your plan dates, or whatever that tool might be, so that they can take a bit of ownership. And there is open communication about, oh no, that bill's been paid, put it here, it was paid by this method, or oh no, we got a discount. So that spend money was actually paying that bill, but they gave us a discount, or whatever that might be. So it's much, much easier to keep clean if you take ownership of that. And then, of course, that flows through to our BASs and, everything else. If you've got Susan's problem, it's great fun doing a BAS, particularly if they're accrual based.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
just a whole can of worms.
Yes, yep. The other comment I sort of picked up on too was the approval process, and I've sort of had a number of experiences over time where that whole approval chain within a business is sometimes particularly smaller businesses can get a little bit shaky, and I think again that's a big issue for that approval process, and this sounds like it solves it as well.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we use ApprovalMax. Within ApprovalMax, we utilize the workflow and the approval chains. So we're able to set up the rules and the workflow to match the business need or their financial policy delegations or whatever that might be. Keeps people out of the finance system. It keeps a separation. So staff aren't going to see bills that they're not supposed to see. And yeah, it's again, having those right tools to do this service. It's a no-brainer, to be honest.
Yeah, yep, fantastic. James, might bring you into the conversation now. We can see a client has a need. So could you share some of the tips with our audience when identifying suitable clients for these AP services?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Kelvin. Look, I think from my perspective, I think identifying the right clients is a very important topic, and especially for the firms that are maybe exploring this as a service, that are looking to provide AP as a service for the first time, because it really makes sense to come up with a bit of a strategy in terms of how we're looking to deliver this and how we can really maximize the potential results that we get by offering this to our existing client base. So what I've seen in some firms that I've spoken to that have found success with delivering this as a service is they start by segmenting their client base into 3 different groups. So the first group, these are typically the ones that are most likely to want or need an AP service. And these could be clients that have expressly mentioned that want or need, and are based on the criteria that I'll talk about soon. Then you've got a second group, and these are firms that fit into some of these criteria, and there's definitely potential that we can explore to see value, that they can see value in this as a service. And then finally, the last group these are the clients that don't usually engage with additional services. They don't have that right mindset in terms of exploring different options with us, and they wouldn't see the value in services like this. So some of the key criteria that we can look at are size, for example. And I think, look, an AP service makes the most sense for businesses that have grown to the point where the business owner is no longer directly involved in the day-to-day operations of processing invoices, right? And the reason for this is usually when they're a sole operator, they're deeply involved in their business. So they know every bill, every expense that needs to be paid. But then when it gets to the point where they have to delegate this to their team, there can be a lot of uncertainty and a lack of confidence that arises because there's that loss of transparency, right, into the process. And so I think this is where an AP service can really be beneficial, because not only does it help them streamline that process, but it also brings back that transparency and confidence into understanding everything that's being approved, and that everything is above board. A second thing to look out for is the industry. So we find that, most industries can work really well, but there are really some industries that need AP as a service more than others. So for example, NFP clients, they typically have higher regulatory and compliance requirements. So having a more professional AP service with the proper audit trails and documentation really helps to reduce the potential of non-compliance. And then you've got other industries like retail and construction or manufacturing. And those ones typically have, high transaction volumes or complex payment terms and have a stronger desire to manage their supplier relationships as well. So those are really good industries as a fit for AP as a service. And then the final thing to look out for is digitization. So, when you're looking to provide AP as a service and you want to do that in a way that's scalable and efficient, you really need to use a tool, as Nikki mentioned, you need a product to help you provide that in a scalable way. And you need something that integrates with the client's accounting system. So if they're already using a system, a cloud-based system like Xero or QuickBooks Online, they're really likely to be receptive to additional cloud-based tools to help them in other aspects of their business as well. And even better if they're already ingrained in the ecosystem, right? If they're using OCR tools like Dext, or maybe they're using reporting tools like Fathom or Sift, it's really going to make it much easier to open that conversation with the client because you're not having to convince them to move into digitization on the whole. It's more about AP as a service. And it's just made much easier when they're already digitized.
Yeah, you mentioned an interesting one there, James, one I hadn't thought of, which is not-for-profits, but you're right. Like that's an area that often comes under scrutiny. There's a requirement for audit, a requirement for compliance, very detailed, and you're right. Accounts payable would be a big issue in those particular organisations to get absolutely spot on. So that's one I hadn't thought of before. Do you find any particular industry is of more concern than another?
I think the ones I mentioned are usually the ones that we see coming into ApprovalMax. But there's different requirements, right? So for NFP, like you mentioned, the compliance and regulatory side of it is a higher need. And then for some other industries, it'll be more around like streamlining that process because they have so many bills and transactions that it's the time saved that's really the main issue.
Yeah, volume can be a real problem, can't it?
Mm.
Thanks very much for that, James. Nikki, what are the questions you ask to assess whether a client is suitable or not for an accounts payable process?
Usually my first question is, do they pay things on account? If they are primarily a cash-based business, and not cash as intangible cash, but they're just paying their bills as they come in and have that in and out churn, is potentially not a need for an AP service. But if they pay anything on account, particularly end of month, 30 days end of month, that's always a good key that this might be a potential service that they need. Then again, what's their current process, as I covered off before. Ask them what is their process now, and that particularly in that approval space, how do they know, where is their confidence level in that process? And again, if they mention a spreadsheet, probably a good opportunity to put some other tools in place, and cash flow monitoring. It really is just such a big deal. Do they actually know how much is going to come out of their bank account at the end of the month? A lot of clients don't. And if you can give them that in the first week of the month, if you can tell them this is how much cash is coming out at the end of the month, they will think you're a queen or a king. It's a really big, tangible thing for them from a stress level, all sorts of different effects on that cash flow monitoring.
Yeah. Do you find there's the comment there about, is it a manual system? Are you actually finding that there is many manual systems still in play these days?
So many. Oh, so many. We started working with a retail organization. It was a couple of years ago now. And when we first met with them, they literally had filing cabinets all around the room, filing cabinets. And they joked that their printing costs were in the thousands of dollars because their CFO, and we're not replacing the CFO, we are just taking a little bit of the process out of their day to day. He literally would print and stamp every invoice. We actually joked that our fees would be cheaper than their printing, and we weren't far wrong.
Is that right?
It was,
There you
and
go.
this is an organization that is I would consider up with the times. They were not, 20 years ago. This was a happening business now that keeps up with technology, but this process they'd never even looked at. They'd never even considered that they could outsource it. And it was quite an eye-opener, that one. Because a lot of businesses themselves don't realize it. Wow, we can free up, an awful lot of time and money if we outsource this. So
Yeah.
that really does help.
Yep. No, thanks for that. Tech stacks, they're a big thing these days. You often hear people talking about what tech stacks do you have to have in place to run an efficient business. So Nikki, what tech stack do you have in place when it comes to offering accounts payable as a service?
There's three main tools that you need. One is something to capture the document with some OCR technology. And obviously these are all cloud-based. So that could be your Dext, HubDoc, one of those OCR capture services. Then we use ApprovalMax as our approval software. And if I can just quickly jump back with the NFPs that we were talking about just quickly, using something like ApprovalMax shows the client where you're coding it. And because they have quite often, NFPs have very complex programs and projects and grants and acquittals, they get to see where you've put the transaction. So that's just a little bit of a side thought. So you need that software to capture the document. You need something to approve the document. For us, that is ApprovalMax. And then, of course, you need the finance system. So for us, that's usually a combination of QBO or Xero. And then you may use another app to physically do the payment, or that might be a custom process based on the client. That might be, they might still do the batch payment, or you might provide the ABA file, or use something like Airwallex. There's lots of different ways to physically get the bills paid, but for us, capture, approval, finance system.
Yeah, okay. Might be just a quick worth a quick clarification. I see Taryn's asked a question there about clarifying how the actual workflow process works. Does the invoice go from Dex to Xero to ApprovalMax? What's the flow? Do either of you want to cover off on that for us?
Yeah, I can chat on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe just from the way it works in ApprovalMax. So we have an integration with Dext. So if you are scanning documents in Dext, that can go straight into ApprovalMax and then push through the approval workflow that you've set up for bills or purchase orders or whatever documents that you are scanning. And then once that's all approved, it then flows back into Xero. But as you can see, we've got a feature for ApprovalMax capture as well, which also acts as the OCR tool. So you can essentially keep everything within a single system.
I might get you just to elaborate on that now, James, because as Nikki mentioned, you guys have launched the ApprovalMax capture product recently. Do you want to jump into that a little bit more and just give listeners a bit of an idea of what that actually does?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a new feature. So we released this just within the last month and a half, 2 months. Essentially, it's an OCR tool. So OCR stands for optical character recognition. So if you're currently using Dext or HubDoc to scan bills or invoices, you can actually now do this directly in ApprovalMax using ApprovalMax capture. So there's a couple of key features that it involves. So firstly, you can choose to upload your bills one by one when you receive them, or you can do it in bulk. So if there's, a specific time in the day or in the week where you're processing bills and you've got several of them to do, you can drag them all into ApprovalMax, and ApprovalMax will process them all together. You've got snap and process on the go. So this is going to help save a lot of time. You're able to take a photo and then upload that straight into ApprovalMax whenever you're on the move. So you've got the option there to do paper invoices by taking a photo, or uploading PDF invoices as well. So that depends on how you're receiving them. You've got dedicated bill email inbox. So it's a similar functionality, I believe, with Xero, where you've got a dedicated email address that you can email your bills into, and then ApprovalMax picks up that attachment and processes those bills. And then, of course, with all of these options, you've got that intelligent field population. So basically extracting all of the data that's contained in the invoice. So that's including things like the dates, suppliers, line item details, quantities, amounts, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, look, it really helps to save a lot of time, especially if you're not using an OCR tool at the moment, right? If you're manually coding in all of this information, there's that potential for errors or mistakes as well. So lots of benefits that can be found with an OCR tool.
Yeah, terrific. Now, James, how does ApprovalMax help with the whole automation piece? We've spoken a lot about it, obviously, and we've seen the workflow there, but obviously, managing risk and then that accountability process. Could you just talk us through how ApprovalMax actually covers these items?
Yeah, for sure. So the automated approval workflows, this is probably the core feature within ApprovalMax. Essentially, what we do is we talk with Xero, or accounting systems like Xero and QuickBooks Online. So if you have a bill that is awaiting approval, that can essentially flow through into ApprovalMax and then go through the approval steps. This allows you to set up exactly how bills, purchase orders, sales invoices, etc., should move through an approval process. So to give an example, if there's a business that has multiple departments, they've got, sales, marketing, HR, etc., I might want to set up the bill workflow to require approval from the department head, and then it'll flow to the finance team. And then maybe we want to set a rule where any expenses over $2,000 need to be approved by the CFO. So you've got the flexibility to set up those specific rules based on the different amount, based on account code, based on Xero tracking categories. It's super flexible and helps save massive amounts of time to get bills approved. On average, 25% of bills are approved in 2 hours and 50% in 1 day, which is much faster than what some businesses come to us with taking a week to get bills approved because it's sitting in somebody's inbox, and then one person is trying to send follow-up messages saying, hey, can you get this approved? Can you get this approved? Not a very efficient process.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
You've also got...
Yeah, sorry, James, keep going.
No, go ahead. You had a question there?
Oh, I was just going to say, while you were talking about some of those processes, I noticed a question from Jody earlier asking about international payments. Does ApprovalMax handle the international side of things as well?
So we've got an integration with AirWallex, which does allow for international payments. So that will allow for a seamless integration with the AirWallex payment platform. And yeah, you can process everything through AirWallex.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks for that.
Awesome. Just a second point in terms of how ApprovalMax helps with that risk management and accountability. So you've got automated audit reports for every transaction. So as it states, ApprovalMax is going to generate an audit report for every document that flows through the ApprovalMax process. So it's going to refer to who's approved it, when was it approved, were there any changes to the workflow during the approval process, et cetera, et cetera. So that gets attached to the bill, to the document, once it flows through into Xero as well. So if any auditors are looking into past transactions, you've got a single place where they can see everything that was involved in that approval process. You got fraud detection. So this allows the notification of administrators of any changes post-approval. So in 2021, Xero did a study of over 1,000 small businesses, and it found that 1 in 5 of these small businesses have fallen victim to fraud or scammers, losing on average $15,500. So fraud is, it's a big problem. And ApprovalMax helps with that by notifying admins if there are any changes to the bill post-approval. It'll also notify if there's any duplicates, right? If there's any duplicates that are awaiting approval. And also if any bills skip the approval process and go straight from awaiting approval straight into awaiting payment, you get notified of that as well. So yeah, really helping businesses get some peace of mind back, that there's a system in place keeping track of everything. And, if the bookkeeper's looking to do the AP service, these controls are super valuable to protect the bookkeeper and the firm as well.
Yeah, that sort of flows nicely into Jody's next question, which is in terms of the physical payment itself, is that the bookkeeper undertaking the AP service, or is it the business owner that's dealing with the payment?
Nikki, maybe you can share some insight into how things work from your perspective.
That depends on the client. We have a combination. So we have a few where we send them the batch and the little ABA file that comes out of the finance system. And there's others we'll actually upload that for them. We have another one that they totally manage when and how the bills are physically paid. So that is a complete combination. We don't have any clients that we can physically spend their money. We can only get it to a point where we've uploaded it to a bank and then they have to physically approve it. And that's a risk mitigation approach for us.
I was going to
But
say that would be a really good risk mitigation.
Yeah, but complete flexibility, Jody, as to who physically pays the bill. But again, the client usually has more ownership over accounts payable.
Yep, terrific. Thanks, Nikki. And Nikki, just do you have anything further to add to what James was talking about earlier in respect to that risk management and accountability piece?
Look, all of the ApprovalMax is fabulous in that. And again, from managing our risk as well. So nothing can go into the system without it going through ApprovalMax. We've even had a situation where, a client was cranky because the supplier didn't get paid. But we were able to show them, well, you haven't approved it yet. It's still sitting in ApprovalMax. So that pushed the onus back onto the client. Within the audit trail, who and when it captures it and attaches it as a separate document, priceless. That has solved little mysteries for us so many times. And again, in that not-for-profit space, auditors love it because if they're testing financial delegation policies, it's very, very easy for them to test because they can see who approved and when they approved. So, yeah, it's fabulous.
Yep, terrific. All right, time for another poll. Now, I think I mucked that up before, but I'm going to blame Pete for that because he gave me a slide deck that had the polls swapped around. So we're actually going to ask that question now. Where does accounts payable fit into your business model? So are you an established business at the moment? You're considering accounts payable as a service? Do you want to consider other things, or I'm not looking to develop anything right now? So if you could just tap something into there for us, that'd be fantastic. And just while people are sort of doing that, Nikki, just the scheduling process itself, like that was something that James spoke about. Can you just give us a quick outline as to how you schedule those reports for your client? Do you do them at a specific date or time, or is it? It must make your workflows a lot easier when all the work that bookkeepers have to do around this time of year with BAS and TPAR reporting, etc. It should be a fairly easy thing to slot into your workflow, I'm guessing.
For us, it's very automated. So we're capturing the bill straight from the supplier. So we utilize the dedicated email address approach. One of our bookkeepers is in clearing that capture software every couple of days. Again, that client's approving it very quickly. And for most of them, again, they've taken ownership of their accounts payable. So for most of them, we don't have to provide reports during the month. But they know that everything is in by a specific date for the previous month. So it just sort of chugs along very easily. As we approach the end of month, that's when we'll have discussions around cash flow and the planning of the actual payments. But for a big chunk of the month, it's just chugs along really, really well.
Yeah, yep. Thanks for that. All right, well, there's the results of that poll. Looked like we've got a number of people who have got it as an established business line, which is great to see, and also a number of other people that are considering implementing it into their business. So also pretty good to see, because it is and can be a great revenue line. We had our part of our survey going back in time, looking at what services bookkeepers actually do charge for, and accounts payable was an increasing one, which was fantastic to see. Now, James, I hear you've got a great takeaway to get everyone set up for accounts payable. Do you want to share a bit of that with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think we've seen it in the results of the poll as well. People are looking into providing this as a potential service for their clients. So we took that feedback and basically talked to some firms that we work with who have found some success with this, and put together a guide on some of the best practices and tips and tricks that firms have done to help you set up AP as a service. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd highly recommend scanning the QR code there. You can download that for free, and there's a lot of great information on how other firms have found some success delivering this as a service for their clients.
Yeah, fantastic. And if someone wanted to learn a little bit more?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We've got a free 14-day trial of ApprovalMax. So if it is resonating with you, if it's something that you'd like to test out for yourself and see how it works, highly recommend jumping onto our website, which is ApprovalMax.com. You've got, as I mentioned, a free 14-day trial, no credit card information required. You can test out all the features. So put your clients on, set up some workflows, see how it works, see how it would fit into their day-to-day processes. And if you like it, you can go ahead straight away. You also get access to a partner account manager as well during that process. So we can assist you with setting everything up. I know it's sometimes difficult to learn new software, but we've got our team here to assist you during that process.
Yeah, fantastic. And if anyone's not monitoring chat, Christine just asked a question of James about which software does it work with. So we're looking at, my understanding, and one of the guys just from ApprovalMax just answered that. So we're looking at Xero, NetSuite, and QBO. Is that correct? They're the integrated software at the minute?
That's correct. Yeah. We also integrate with AirWallex on the payments side of things as well.
On the payment side. Yep. Fantastic. All right. Well, we're looking to wrap up now. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them into chat, and we'll get the guys to answer those for you, or just some comments. That'd be great also. And as I mentioned, look, our industry survey shows that bookkeepers are capable of building a really great business around accounts payable. It's a regular, predictable income stream that can build through your bookkeeping practice, and it obviously fits a very valuable client need, as the team have discussed today. So if you've got any questions, bang them in. Otherwise, I'd just like to round out by thanking Nikki and James for your input today. Thanks very much, guys, for your commentary. And thanks for your attention today, everyone. And look forward to catching up with you next time. And there's a recording, I believe, going out. So, James, do you want to quickly just address that one for us?
Yeah, our marketing team will send through a recording. So it should be within 24 hours. You'll receive an email with the link to that.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, looks like we don't have any questions in there. Guys, any final comments to make before we wrap up?
No.
No, all good. James, you're good?
Okay. All good. Thanks.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, thanks for joining us today, everyone. And hopefully you get a lot out of your accounts payable processes. Have a chat to the team at ApprovalMax. Fantastic product. And look forward to joining you for another episode. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.